Welcome everybody to 7 Steps to Finding Your Calling. We're going to do a quick technology test. Welcome, welcome. Let's just make sure everything is working right. Welcome, guys. Good morning to those of you who are just getting up as I did a few hours ago. Hey guys, let's go ahead and just test everything out. Let me know if you can hear me and see me. Go ahead and use the chat box in front of you. We'll get started in just a minute. I want to make sure everything's working right. Grab my water. Where are you tuning in from? And let me know, yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can see you. If you can't see or hear me, then you might not get this message. Hey, Dave, Tom, Jerry, Cindy. Wow. All right. Everybody's here. Cool. Good times. All right. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from. It's great to just, spend a couple minutes finding out where everybody is. Pennsylvania. Wow, it's going fast. Baton Rouge. Welcome, Donna, Pam, Melanie. You guys are commenting so quickly it's hard to see everything. Well, cool. All right, Tucson, Detroit, Chicagoland. This will be a fun time because I don't typically do presentations like this. It's going to be really good. I'm going to do a quick couple things here. You guys should be able to see each other's chat. So if you see somebody you recognize or something, say hi. We'll get started in just a second. Ellen says, can't see you. You should be able to see me, Ellen. If you're having any trouble, I would recommend that you refresh your monitor, your browser rather. You could refresh your monitor too. No, just refresh the, reload the browser and it should be better. Hello, Pamela Hodges. Always good to see you, friend. Danielle, Tammy, good. Okay, cool. So let me know why you're here. What are you hoping to get out of this? I always like to know where people are at, how I can help them, and we'll try to do our best to figure it out. Jennifer from Edinburgh, Scotland. Good times. Welcome, guys. Oh, somebody from India. Baibov. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Sorry. Anthony from the Philippines. Always love seeing our friends from the Philippines. Tom wants to find his clarity on his calling. Good answer. To affirm a call, I believe I have, says Ron. John says, trying to achieve my goals in life. Welcome, Gary from Olympia. Pamela says, seeking more Goins wisdom with a capital W about finding clarity. Trying to decide what type of book to write. Very specific. That's Vandini. Brenda says, I'm hoping to learn how to be a better writer. I'm from Montana. That's a good place to be a writer, I think, is in Montana. Jim from Nashville. Hey, Jim. How you doing? Jim, want to get some help on being a writer. Awesome. Wow. You guys are very chatty this morning. Some of you, it's evening, I'm sure. Pam is in pursuit of writing her first book. Very cool. So I'm going to do one more thing, and then we will be ready to go. Okay. All right. So what is one thing standing in the way of this thing that you want to achieve? Drink a little McDonald's coffee this morning, which is like drinkable, not my favorite, but drinkable. What is one thing standing in your way? I want to find out what your obstacles are, and then we'll get rolling. McCafe. Yep, Brad. Jesse, a quiet place to work. Time and direction. Vicky says, me. Has Jeff started talking yet? All I see is a sit tight image. Yes, Diana started talking. Let me see if I can type into, can I type into the chat? Click to mute the chat to everybody. You should be able to see and hear me. If you're having trouble, go ahead and reload. Okay, we're gonna jump in. I'll show my slides in a second. I've got a presentation for you. Welcome to the Goins Writer office. Daria says McDonald's sucks. Tim Hortons is better. We don't have Tim Hortons down here. Sorry, Daria. As a rule, I'm kind of a coffee snob, so I use my fancy espresso machine to make a cortado this morning, and I was just pounding McDonald's for additional caffeination for you guys. Okay, all right, you guys are chatting and that's gonna distract me, but whatever. Okay, so here's how this is gonna go. I've got a presentation for you, 7 steps to finding your calling. I want to share with you why we're going to talk about this in the first place, why I think it's going to help a lot of you, and then just give you an idea of where we're going to go. So typically, these things tend to run about 90 minutes total. And the way that works is the first 5-10 minutes that we've just done has been sort of getting to know each other, finding out where everybody is tuning in from. We've got 218 viewers right now, so that's a good good group. I'm excited to chat with you guys. And what I want to do here is I want to share with you 7 things that I did and that I've learned from successful people who've also done these things that help you succeed in figuring out what you want to do and doing it. And in my case, it was becoming a full-time writer. And I wrote a post earlier this week about how to not fail as a professional writer. Like, how do you, if you do these things, you're going to set yourself up for success. If you don't do these things, it's going to be harder. And in this presentation, where I'm going to share with you those 7 things. These are the 7 major themes of my best-selling book, The Art of Work. So if you read that book, then some of this stuff is going to sound familiar. Some stuff I'm going to share is going to be new, more practical information. But some of it is going to resonate. And so I'm going to share with you as sort of the framework. And then at the very end, we're going to do Q&A. As you might know, we've got registration open for the Art of Work course, which is a 7-module course that'll follow these 7 steps. So if this resonates with you, that might be a good option to consider. We've got an exclusive bonus that's happening this week and next week for that. I'll answer any questions that you have about that. Nothing super high pressure. This is just an opportunity to go deeper in this content. Regardless, my goal here is to help you overcome some of those obstacles and take the next step and figure out what you want to do. Now, why is this important? Well, because I think that many of us in life strive for things without realizing what we're striving for. And I keep going back to this because it's such an important idea. Thomas Merton, a trapper from Kentucky, said that many of us will climb a ladder in life only to realize at the end of our lives that it was leaning against the wrong wall. So finding your purpose, figuring out what you're meant to do, discovering your calling, these are all kind of words that I use interchangeably. This is important because I think, relatively speaking, success is the easier thing to accomplish than not. What I mean by that is it's easier than ever to succeed today at the things that you want to do, achieving your goals, because of the connection of the internet, the ability of technology to consume massive amounts of information. You can launch a business on the cheap. You can build an audience of thousands of people seemingly overnight. You can accomplish incredible things that used to take people years, sometimes a lifetime, and they can happen virtually overnight. And so opportunity is abundant, but fewer and fewer, because we live in this age of distraction, fewer of us are thinking about what we should do, what we ought to do. Just because you can do something, just because you can be successful at something, doesn't mean that you should. And I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but I am here to help kind of guide the conversation, because I have succeeded at things that ultimately didn't matter to me, and I think that's the worst kind of failure. Okay, so I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about why, but that's why we're here today, because I don't want you to climb a ladder in life only to realize that it was leaning up against the wrong thing that I did, that you can do, that I think will help you achieve your goals. So those of you who want to be writers, I know there's many of you here. These are 7 things that I think most professionals do. I know most professionals do, and most amateurs don't do. And you can kind of think of this as like eating your vegetables or something. If you do 6 out of 7 of these things, like, will you still live? Absolutely. If you eat most of your vegetables, like, are you going to live a long, healthy life? Probably. If you eat very few of them, is it going to be harder to stay healthy? Absolutely. And so these 7 things are the ways that you can pursue your dreams in a healthy way. Somebody asked, are you going to talk about work-life balance? And yes, you absolutely are. Anthony says you got a clean haircut. I did get a haircut last week. Feeling good about that. It had been a couple of months and I was feeling shaggy. Vandini wants to make friends here. Guys, feel free to use the chat box to connect with other people. Share, if somebody asks for your blog or website, feel free to, share that there. That's all very cool. Okay, I'm gonna go to my slides now. We've got almost 250 people here. Great to have all you guys here. So excited to jump in. Let's begin, because I wanna get to your questions. So we're gonna have about 45 minutes of teaching, and then we'll go to Q&A. I'll share with you more about the Art of Work course for those of you who are interested in that. And if you don't have the book, this is a great opportunity to learn more about it and see if it's a good fit for you. And that's it, guys. Nothing sneaky or underhanded going on. Okay, all right. So now you guys are asking questions. I'm gonna move to the presentation, and then we will answer questions at the very end. So save your questions. I'll go back through and scroll as much as I can, but I might miss them. So if I do, you can ask them again. Hello, Trey. Welcome. Some of you guys are just joining. We're just now moving into the teaching section. If you can't hear me, if I freeze, feel free to refresh. That should fix it. And let's go. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and let me do this real quick. Okay. All right. Okay. Can you see that? Let's just do a quick test on that. Everybody should be able to see my screen now. Can you see it? Yes, good. Okay, great. I hate when I did a whole presentation. I was working through this whole thing, and I couldn't. Nobody can see the screen. Guys, a couple of times throughout this presentation, just to make sure that we're kind of tracking together. So this is called, I call this the Art of Finding Your Calling. 7 Steps Discovering What You're Meant to Do by Jeff Goins. And this is all inspired by my book, The Art of Work. And this is a free presentation. You're welcome to take all this information and go apply it. That's absolutely what I hope you do. And for those of you interested in going deeper, I would recommend the book and the course, which I'll talk more about at the end when we do Q&A. So I'm going to share with you 7 important themes from the book, and that are important to figuring out what you want to do and actually doing it. And so whether you absolutely know what you're meant to do, or you're trying to gain clarity on the process, or you have no idea, this presentation is going to help you take the next step, and that's what it's designed to do. So welcome, everybody. That's me sitting on a fire escape somewhere in downtown Franklin, Tennessee. If you want to chat with each other on Twitter, if you want to share any quotes or tweetables or anything, you can use the hashtag Goins webinar. I use that for every webinar, so you'll see older tweets from previous webinars. It's just a great way for me to follow up with you guys, because once we close all this technology down, I don't see your comments anymore or anything. And so if there's a question that I didn't answer, or if you want to connect with each other afterwards on Twitter, use the hashtag Goins webinar. If you tweet anything or say, hey, I'm tuning in to this thing, you can use that, and you guys can stay in touch with each other. And it's a way for me to follow up with you as well. Okay, so we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to ask you this question in a different way. So we all have things that we want to do. And my question is this: what's holding you back? What do you think is holding you back from living the life you dream of? So earlier I asked, well, why are you here? Some people said, I want to finish my first book. Somebody else said, I want to gain clarity on my calling. Somebody else says, I want to confirm the thing that I think that I already know, but I just want to confirm it. So what do you think is holding you back from living the life you dream of? Somebody said, myself, I'm standing in my way. I like that answer. It's a very honest answer. Time is another big one. So somebody said, I just don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. All of those things I think are legitimate things that stand in our way. Before I address those obstacles, which I think are very real obstacles, sometimes people tell you, oh, those are excuses, just do it anyway. I don't find that particularly helpful. Whether our problems are big or small, they feel like challenges to us. They feel pretty big to us, and our pain and our struggle, it's our own. And I think it's very disingenuous for somebody to say, oh, that's no big deal. It is a big deal to us. And so the thing standing in your way is an obstacle. I totally get that. But it is not insurmountable. And I want to talk about how we can move through that. So real quick, for those of you who may not know, and those of you who know, this is just kind of a refresher. Here's my story in a nutshell. Over the course of about 2 years, I went from becoming nobody, and I don't mean that in any sort of like self-deprecating way, but just nobody knew who I was or anything. And I became an author, built a 7-figure business, and quit my job. And it was the most incredible, exhilarating, and even exhausting 2 years of my life. Also, that 2 years, my wife and I had a baby. She quit her job. We went from 2 steady incomes to 0 steady incomes. Increased our income, did all kinds of crazy stuff, all based around this discovery process of me realizing I was meant to be a writer. I was working as a marketing director of a nonprofit, a job that I actually really liked, but I felt at the core of my being wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And so over the course of 2 years, I underwent this dramatic transition, and it was life-changing, and it not only affected my life, but affected the lives of many other people. So when you go through an experience like this, I think it's normal for friends and family to ask you, like, how did you do it? Or how did all this happen? And the truth is, and I often say this, if you do the work, you will see the results. And we're going to talk about this in the presentation, but we love the idea of the overnight success. Recently, I was doing a podcast interview, and somebody asked me, what was the one thing that you did that made a difference? Like, what is the one thing that we could do that would help us succeed in ways that you succeeded? And I said, the one thing that I did was a lot of things. I don't think there's one thing. I don't think there's one hidden secret. There's 7 things that I want to share with you today, and I think all 7 of these themes can be translated into important habits. But this isn't a hack. This process took me 2 years, not 2 months, and it may take longer or shorter for you. That's not really the point. The point is, most of us, when we feel blocked in life, when we feel like something is standing in the way between where we are and where we want to be, often the thing that is standing in our way that's preventing us from getting where we want to go, rather, is inertia. And it's not that we want to have an overnight success. Of course, that would be nice. But, like you watch people win the lottery and you go, maybe getting everything that I want all at once is not necessarily the best thing for me. But what most of us want, and what most of us are longing to see, is progress, momentum, some sort of steady accumulation of achieving our goals, of moving in the direction that we want to go. And we either feel like we're standing still or we're moving in the opposite direction of where we ought to be going. And so what I want to share with you are 7 things that you can do that if you start doing them, you're going to begin to see results. So before we jump into that, I just want to check in real quick. Everybody tracking with me so far? Somebody says, all I see is your profile pic around the presentation. Molly says, I think this is pre-recorded. Molly, this is not pre-recorded. Cool. So you guys aren't seeing the slides. Interesting. Okay, let me try this real quick. So let me just check real quick. So you haven't missed a bunch yet, guys. So real quick, can you see the slide? Yes, you can see the slide. I see the slide now. You're back. Oh, interesting. Okay, let's do this. Maybe kind of wonky. Hey, all right. The slides are there now. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you my whole screen. And maybe when I switch windows that it's not working right. So here. Okay. All right. Everybody should see that now, right? If you do the work, you will see the results. Yes? Okay. Let me just check real quick. Okay, good. If you do the work, you'll see the results. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay, so if you do the work, you will see the results. So let's get going, guys. Sorry about that. This is not pre-recorded, by the way. Somebody said I've heard this before. That's funny, Molly. Okay, so there's 7 things that you need in order to become a full-time writer, as some of you want to become, in order to find clarity in your calling, in order to live the life that you dream of. And these are the things that when I started doing them, I started to see momentum. And this is, somebody asked me earlier, hey, I don't want to be a writer. I want to, be a school teacher, or an artist or a fitness trainer? Like, does this work for me? Yes, absolutely. These are themes that apply to vocation in general, your life's work. Okay, so the first theme is awareness. And this is the answer to the question, what am I supposed to do? Somebody said they wanted to come and get clarity about what they're supposed to do. This is a really important question. It's also the wrong question. The truth is, you don't need to know in order to get started. What you do need to do is you need to listen. You need to pay attention to the signs in your life that are pointing you in the direction of things that you should do, and the signs that are pointing you in the direction of the things that you shouldn't do. I like how Parker Palmer, who's an author and activist, says it. He says, before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I must listen to my life telling me who I am. I must listen to my life telling me who I am. And I love that idea, because when I started listening to my life, and all that means is you start paying attention to the things that people say to you about yourself, the compliments that they give you. Oh, you're so good at such and such. You also start paying attention to the desires of your heart, your passions, your interests, your skills, and you start to see common themes emerge. So how do you do this practically? I think there's two simple things. One, identify major moments in your life. So just list down, if you have a piece of paper, I would encourage you to do this right now. If not, do this afterwards. List some of the major moments in your life. And then look for themes that connect these moments to each other. So when I started doing this, I started thinking, and I was just sort of letting my mind wander. I thought of lots of things that stood out to me in my memory as sort of exceptional things that maybe made me different. And one of those things was my mom used to read me the dictionary going on long road trips on vacation. Another one was I won the 6th grade spelling bee, and the winning word was acquiescence. I didn't even know what that word meant, but I memorized how it looked on the page, and so when I heard it, I knew how to spell it. And in college, when I was a Spanish major and a religion double major, I had two majors, and I was working, on papers during finals time, I used to go to the computer lab at 1 o'clock in the morning to escape from the drudgery of study. And I didn't have a computer, so I'd go to the computer lab and I'd write stories. I'd just write, and I'd email myself the file because I didn't have Dropbox or anything back then. And this was my escape. Elizabeth Gilbert says that writing was her home. It was the place that she always returned to. And I felt that way about writing. And I realized that as I began to listen to my life, it was telling me that I needed to be a writer. And I don't think that the past necessarily dictates your future. So, if your dad was a plumber and your mom was a plumber and your great uncle was a plumber, that doesn't mean you have to be a plumber. So the past doesn't dictate your future, but it should inform it. Flannery O'Connor says that, if you've survived childhood, you have enough material to be a writer for the rest of your life. And I love that. But I think that's true for all things, that if you've gotten through, the first 15, 20 years of your life, and you're an adult, you have enough information to know some things about yourself. You don't know everything necessarily about yourself, but you know enough to know, like, never been good at this, I've never liked this, I've always kind of, like this or that. And it doesn't mean you can't acquire new skills, but it does mean at that point that you have certain personality traits that you ought to pay attention to. So that's the first theme. And before we move on, let me just kind of check back in with everybody, make sure everybody could see the slides. You should be able to see me now. Vandini says I'm still 14. Yeah, so like you're almost there, Vandini. That's okay. Dua says I can't identify any major moments. Good question. Hey Molly, glad you're still here and that you didn't disappear when you thought it was pre-recorded. Can you explain themes? Oh, lots of questions. Let me just answer a few quick questions and then we'll jump back in. Okay, so if you can't identify any major themes, identify some minor ones. Pick some memories and start seeing if you can identify any themes, connecting them together. Themes. So Jesse, what I'm talking about here are the 7 things that you need to have in order for you to understand and be doing your calling, living out your calling. And so these are the themes that should be woven throughout that journey. And when I'm talking about major moments in your life and how to connect them, just things that they have in common. They don't have to necessarily be the same thing recurring over and over and over again. It's probably not going to happen. Stephen Pressfield calls these shadow careers. I think early in life, we tend to chase things that are the ghosts. They're the shadow of the thing that we're really trying to achieve. And for me, I was a professional musician for a year. I was a marketing director. There were these things that I did that were all like they were pieces of the big thing that I was chasing, which was I liked making things. I liked to create things and connect with people. Okay, so good times. What are you listening to on your earbuds? You guys have funny questions. I'm listening to you guys. I guess I don't need my earbuds. That's a good question. I will pull them out, I guess. It's a funny thing. Okay, let's go back to sharing my screen with you. Okay, so, apprenticeship. This is the second thing that you need. You need to become an apprentice. This is the answer to the question where we go, well, who can help me? I need a mentor, I need a guide, I need some kind of teacher. And I think the places that these people come from can surprise us. A lot of us are looking for a mentor, and the truth is you need to stop looking for the perfect mentor and start recognizing the one or the ones that are already there. I call this the Steve Jobs strategy, and if you know Steve's story at all, probably know that he's the founder of Apple Computers, the genius behind the iPhone, the iPad, the MacBook, all these great things that have made the conveniences of modern living really wonderful. And also founded Pixar and left quite a legacy with his life. What you might not know about Steve Jobs is he had a series of apprenticeships. First, starting with auditing calligraphy classes at Reed College, where he initially started going, dropped out because it was so expensive, started sleeping on the floors of friends' dorm rooms, and started auditing classes that were interesting to him. And he said later on that taking these calligraphy classes, learning about typography and the beauty of type, informed a lot of creative decisions he made in regards to typography for Apple years later. Well, then he goes and he works for Atari. He partners with his friend Steve Wozniak and basically passes off Woz's work as his own. Spends some time in India, and he has all of these random educational experiences that never begin with him approaching some teacher or mentor and saying, "Will you teach me?" And instead, it looks a lot like our lives. You meet this person, they give you this advice, you go do it, then they disappear forever. You have a teacher that believes in you at some point, maybe a parent. There are all these people, and there's never just one mentor. If you've had one mentor for the past 20 years, that's wonderful. It's also rare, and I think a lot of people are holding out for finding this person, and they're missing all of the teachers around them. What Steve Jobs did that was very brilliant and also useful to his career is he saw everybody as a potential teacher, as somebody that he could learn from. And of course, there's all kinds of amazing stories about his eccentricities and ego and all these things. But what he was doing, where he was going in all of these situations, is he was learning. He was using the people in his life and learning from them and using those opportunities to practice and become better at his craft. That's what an apprenticeship looked like back in the Middle Ages. You went and you submitted yourself to some master craftsperson, and you did everything that they told you to do, even if you didn't understand it. And then eventually, after 10 years of experience, you got to go do it yourself and take on apprentices yourself. We don't have that kind of system today. What we do have are a bunch of accidental people, a multitude of mentors coming in and out of our lives that we can take advantage of. And I call that the Steve Jobs strategy. And it's basically just think of people in your life that you can learn from right now, that you can just get a little bit closer to, learn something from. It doesn't have to become an official mentorship. In fact, I would recommend that you not try to name it or give it some fancy name, and instead just find a way to do what these people teach, to learn something from them and then apply it. That's the essence of an apprenticeship. So my encouragement to you is make a list, identify these people. Maybe it's just, I would encourage you to think of at least 3 people that you can learn from today, and then reach out to them and try to deepen the relationship a little bit. Again, don't call it a mentorship. Just try to let them know that you are learning from them. Okay, so that's the second thing that you need, is you need apprenticeship. So first, you have to have an idea of where you want to go. You don't have to just know, but you can start listening to your life. Then you start apprenticing, and then you begin to practice. So practice happens in the context of looking around our lives and finding people that we can learn from. So this answers the question, which is, what if I'm not any good, right? So have you said this about maybe your writing, or this new business idea that you have, or your leadership abilities? You find yourself in a place where the skills required to do the job don't match the opportunity. They don't match the thing that you're responsible for. So what if I'm not any good? I think there's this myth about finding your calling that you just should be good at it. It should come naturally. And that's not true. The truth is that we're always called to things that are bigger than us, right? We're always called to things that are bigger than us. We're not called to do things that we're already able to do. And instead, when we are called to do something, the ability often follows it. How does the ability follow? Does it just magically appear? Well, more often than not, it happens through the vehicle of practice, of sitting down and doing it over and over and over again. And this process can be challenging. It can even be painful. And this is also a sign of figuring out, is this something that I actually want to do? When I sit down and practice it and get better and better at it, and I push through the challenges and the discomforts, do I even enjoy it? And if not, maybe it's time to move on to something else. If so, it's time to go deeper and deeper in that practice. So I don't think that practice just makes you better. Of course it does that, but remember, we can practice the wrong things. We can climb a ladder and it ends up being the wrong ladder in life, leaning against the wrong wall. We can vigorously move towards the achievement of our goals, only to realize that they're the wrong goals. They're the wrong things to want. It's not actually what we want out of life. This is why the first theme of awareness is something that needs to be woven throughout this whole journey. You need to constantly be listening to your life as you try new things, go asking yourself, not just, is this what I should do, but ask yourself the question, is this me? Is this who I really am? So practice doesn't just make you better. It can also help you realize what you're supposed to do. And you do this by pushing yourself to the utter limits of your ability. And I call this painful practice. It's not always fun. It's not always comfortable. But I guarantee you that if you're doing something and it hurts and it's hard and you can hang in there, and this is true for world-class athletes and world-famous artists and authors and entrepreneurs, if you can do it when it hurts and it's hard and there's still part of it that you love and you go, this is really fun when I'm doing it, but it's worth it, then you just might have found your calling. And so practice helps you clarify the call itself. Somebody said that they're here to figure out if this is, to clarify this thing that they think they should be doing, but they're just not sure. If you're at that point, I would encourage you to put that thing, that skill, that passion, that hobby through the crucible of painful practice and see if it can endure. So how do you do this practically? Well, you can use what's called the Pimsleur Approach. Paul Pimsleur was a linguist who taught that you can become proficient at just about any language. And it was very controversial. He came out with this decades ago through a series of audio tapes. Basically, he taught that if you spent 30 minutes a day immersing yourself into listening to it, you, within about 3 months, depending on the difficulty of the language, of course, but within 3 months, you would become proficient at it, meaning that you could listen to and understand basic conversation and even be able to participate in it. And he based this on the way that children learn language versus the way that adults try to learn foreign languages. Children learn English, Spanish, Chinese, whatever. They learn it from their parents. How? Well, by listening to them, by immersing themselves into the activity, which looks a lot like, what we think of as an apprenticeship, right? You immerse yourself into activity, and it just becomes second nature eventually. And they don't learn it by reading or taking tests. Kids learn language from just listening to their parents. And this is how you learn any skill, incidentally. You immerse yourself into the activity. You put yourself in the company of experts. And because of the amazingness of technology, there is unlimited opportunities to learn from people just by Googling, how do I do this? And watching something on YouTube. So the opportunities to learn are unlimited. But the challenge of practice is really what stands in the way of achieving personal greatness. So how do you do this? Well, I think practically you pick something and you spend 30 minutes a day immersing yourself into that activity. I mean, it's just that simple. So practically, what do? Say you want to be a writer, you want to build a business, you want to do something, you want to grow your blog from 0 to 1,000 subscribers. Pick one activity, not 20, one activity, and do it for 30 minutes a day for the next 90 days. Immerse yourself into that activity and see if you don't get better. See if you don't start to see progress. See if at the end of that 90 days, you aren't much, much better at this thing that you've been immersing yourself into. That's called the Pimsleur Approach, a very simple way to begin practicing your craft in ways that will quickly start showing results. Okay, so we're going to move through this step. This is called discovery, and then we'll take just a quick break. I'll check in with you guys. I'm going to take a sip of water. We'll jump into this, and then we'll be, I think, over halfway through and almost to your questions. We probably have 20 or so minutes left of the presentation, and then I'll answer your questions. Okay, so when I was writing The Art of Work, I wrote these like 7 steps of how I think you find your calling. And step 1 was you got to discover it. And then you go do it, right? And when I started interviewing hundreds of people who had succeeded in life, and that success meant that they had found something that brought them fulfillment and that they did well. There was a sense of mastery to it. And it integrated with the rest of their lives, meaning that they were able to make a living off of this thing. They were able to stay married and not be estranged from their kids. And somebody asked about life-work balance. And so a calling for me is treating your whole life as this work that you're building, that you spend your life creating. And the truth is that a lot of us are somewhere in the middle of that discovery process. And so if you've been told, well, you got to figure out what you want and then go achieve it, that's just not true. I think you have to begin with some awareness, and we do that through the habit of listening to our life, immersing ourselves into accidental apprenticeships, which is just becoming aware of the people around us that we can learn from, then practicing with diligence the skills that we want to get better and better at using the Pimsleur Approach, 30 minutes a day. Most of us have that amount of time, free time, or we can at least carve it out. And then somewhere in the middle of that process, we begin to discover what we're good at, what we're not good at, what we like, what we don't like. And this step in the process is an important theme. The theme of discovery happens somewhere in the middle. And I think that's a really beautiful, surprising discovery. So this answers the question, when do you just know? Right? People have asked me this. I asked this of all these people that I interviewed who had found their calling. I said, when did you know that this was the thing? And do you know what they told me? The answer that they said, it was, I didn't. So when do you just know? You may not. I don't know that there's some big flash of insight, some huge epiphany. And if there is, that's the exception, not the rule. For most of us, discovery comes in stages. It's a series of small and steady awakenings, which sounds way more glamorous than it really is. It is this process of honing a craft and realizing this is what I'm supposed to do. I say it like this: clarity comes with action. You don't wait for clarity to come. You act your way into clarity. And so when it comes to making this transition from what I think I ought to be doing to actually doing it, this happens somewhere in the middle of the process. And you've heard people say, well, I just took the leap. Take a leap of faith. Turns out that this is not the way that most dreams get built. Most dreams get built slow and steady over time. And the same thing is true for your calling. So I wouldn't take a leap. What I would do is build a bridge. And my bridge was built over the course, as I said at the beginning. It took about 2 years. And the moment of discovery came for me about 15 months into that process. And I was deciding whether or not I should quit my job. And I was evaluating what had just happened in that past, year and a half or so. And here's what had happened. My wife and I had tripled our income, our yearly income, in about 6 months. She had just had a baby, and she wanted to stay home and raise our son. We could now afford for her to do that, and we could also afford for me to quit my job, which was actually never a part of the plan. And I just thought I'd have this job as a marketing director, and I'd also be doing this other thing on the side. And the thing that scared me the most was that I was going to quit something prematurely, or all this was going to go away tomorrow. I was going to take the leap, and as sometimes happens, I was going to fall flat on my face. And if it were just me, I'd probably be comfortable doing that. But because I had to support my wife and now our son, that scared me. And so I went to a friend of mine and I said, what should I do? And I said, one of the things I'm actually afraid of is leaving the nonprofit world to start a business and become an author and do all this stuff. And it looks like I'm chasing the money, and that's not really what I'm doing. But I'm worried that, that may be what happens, that I might start getting greedy and start doing this for the wrong reasons. My friend, his name was Mark, he looked at me and he said, Jeff, what's happened to you is rare. I didn't see it coming. In fact, I don't think anybody saw it coming. And I think you need to consider the possibility that this might be your calling, that this isn't just a good idea. And what I love and kind of hate about that is he says this is rare. And I think that's true. I think this is rare for somebody to find something that they love and do it and be able to pay the bills. But what he was saying to me is that it doesn't have to be. At least that's what I heard. It doesn't have to be rare. And the truth is, it was rare for me. It was an unusual circumstance based on 2 years of work. And I came to this moment where I realized, okay, this is unusual. This is something that I need to pay attention to. And so my challenge to you is, don't just go take the leap tomorrow. Start practicing slow and steady, 30 minutes a day. And you may get to this point where you realize, wow, look at all of this fruit. Look at all this stuff that's happened. This is rare. This is rare for me. This doesn't happen with everything that I put my hand to. I need to consider that maybe it's time to go all in on this. And that's what I did. But it happened 2 years into the process, not at the very beginning. So what's something rare in your life that you're not noticing right now, right? So I look at this, I go, this wasn't part of the plan. A lot of people want to plan their lives, think that they can plan their purpose or something. I don't think that's true. I think that you listen to your life, and that over time you begin to discover more and more about yourself, what you ought to be doing through accidental apprenticeships, through painful practice, and through these discovery moments that happen over time. They don't happen all at once. And I think one of the ways that we discover where we should be focusing our attention, how we can start building bridges towards the things that we want to do, is look at the things that are rare. And it's probably true that there are things that you're neglecting right now that you should be paying more attention to. And it's also probably true that you're paying a lot of attention to something that just isn't quite working. So if you take the Pimsleur approach, you spend 30 minutes a day for 90 days and you don't see any progress, it might be time to change direction. So what's something rare in your life that you're not noticing? I'd love for you to share that in the comments, and we'll take a quick break and look at some of your comments. Look at that little matrix thing there. Inception. What you guys are having a blast, in the comments here. So everybody's still tuned in. We're about halfway through. I just wanted to check in, make sure you guys are hanging in there. Step 3 was practice. Step 4 was discovery. That's right, Marjorie. Jesse says, I love all you crazy, wonderful writing people. This is very encouraging. Love that you guys are connecting with each other. Very cool. So what's something that is rare for you that is that you might be neglecting? So that was the question. What's something rare in your life that you're not noticing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Miantra. James says time management. Bob says, I know too much physics, question mark, question mark. Jerry, my ability to look at what people are doing and reverse engineer how they got there and what they should be doing. I love that. Carol, we're going to listen more to you. Making others comfortable, Lois says. Great. Yeah, wonderful. Very, very cool, guys. Writing every day is rare for me. So my challenge here with this, guys, is look at something that you do that is exceptional, okay? Something that not everybody does. I love what Derek Sivers says. What's obvious to you is amazing to others. What's something that's obvious to you that is rare in the world? What's something that has happened to you that maybe you've gone, oh, that thing, oh, that's nothing. No, that's not nothing. This is where discovery happens, by paying close attention to the things that we tend to take for granted. Okay, so far, here's what we've covered. We're talking about the different stages of finding your calling. Stage 1 is awareness. You begin by listening to your life. Stage 2 is apprenticeship. You don't look for the perfect mentor. You pay attention to the people in your lives and start becoming more and more a student of the people around you. 3 was practice. The way that we get good at something is by putting in at least 30 minutes a day and practicing it using the Pimsleur Approach, which is to spend 30 minutes a day for 90 days and try to get better and better at that. If you reach the point where you're not getting any better and it's not fun anymore, it may be time to change course, and that's practice. 4 is what we just talked about, which is discovery. So we've got 3 left. We're over halfway through. And discovery happens in the middle of the process. This is where we talk about taking the leap and going pro. And that happens not in some moment of epiphany, but it is the slow and steady process of paying attention to things that are rare in your life, building a bridge, spending 30 minutes a day, doing something that over time can create all kinds of momentum that can get you somewhere that you've never been before. Okay, so the next stage in the process, I'm gonna go back to my slides, is profession. So this is where we talk about going pro, going all in, doing the thing, whatever that thing is. And this, like all these stages, doesn't necessarily look the way we think it's going to look. So we think that once we go pro, like that's when we arrive. And what's actually true is when you go pro, you start failing like you've never failed before. And going pro, the mark of being a professional is failure. How much have you actually failed? What do I mean by this? Well, a few years ago, I had my first speaking gig, and it was a free gig. And I highly recommend, if you're trying to get good at anything, including speaking, that you do it a bunch for free, get good at it, and then start charging for it. And so I was at the very beginning of that process. And I went and I did this speech, and I woke up late and rushed off and was almost late there. I got to this local conference that was actually in a bar. It had several hundred people there, and I was speaking at this breakout session in the upstairs of a bar. I don't know what you know about bars, but they're not notoriously known for being well lit. And it just so happens that this random Saturday afternoon, the lights weren't working in this room that I was speaking in, and the audio wasn't working, and the projector, that where I was going to use my slides, I didn't have the right adapter. So here I was speaking in the dark to a room of about 30 people with no sound, no lights on a Saturday morning, just trying to get through this speech. And it was a failure. I mean, I felt like an amateur. I felt dejected and foolish. And so I got back into my car and tried to get out of there as quickly as possible once the speech was over. And I texted a couple of my friends who are professional speakers who make anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 per speech. And I was just complaining. I was going, man, this terrible thing happened. And it was just really frustrating. And I just feel like an amateur is what I said. I did all these things wrong. The gig did all these things wrong. It just doesn't feel like I'm there yet. And here's what they said. Two different people who both, were getting paid at least 5 figures per speech. They said, oh yeah, that happened to me this week. I hate it when that happens. And I was like, what? What do you mean that happened to you this week? You hate it when that happens. Like, this is a normal thing. And I said, oh yeah, that happens all the time. I think we have this idea that once you go pro, once you arrive, that the failure stops, that now you can coast. And it's just not true. And so the question is, what if I fail? Well, that's the wrong question, because we think failure is the enemy. We think failure prevents us from success, but that's not true. Failure doesn't prevent you from success. It leads you there. Failure is the means by which you get to your calling. And so going pro doesn't mean you discover what you're supposed to do and you go and you do it and now you've arrived. Going pro means you take a leap, which is not exactly what you do. It's more like building a bridge. But you get to this point where the bridge is built. You're 2 years in, as I was, and you go, okay, I just got to take that next little step. And we call that a leap, but really it's just taking the next step in a very long process. And the truth is, once you step out onto that, you're not guaranteed success. In fact, you're probably going to continue to fail your way to success. And this was an important lesson that I learned from interviewing all these people who had found their calling, is that they all had lots and lots and lots of failure. But the thing was, the failure wasn't the thing that stood in the way of their success. They learned from their failure, and it helped them achieve a different kind of success that if they had never failed like that, they never would have gotten to where they ultimately ended up. And so I call these moments of failure pivot points. Remember when we talked about doing the Pimsleur Approach and practicing something for 30 minutes a day, and you get to this point where you've done something and it's not working? Well, what do you do now? Well, that's a failure. That's an opportunity to pivot, to do something new with a different kind of effort or strategy, or just do something entirely new. And so some of you are at this point where you've tried and tried and tried and it's just not working. It may be time to pivot. That is not giving up. That is actually taking the next right step in another direction. And everybody I talked to who found their calling had not just one of these moments, but many moments. I think it's a Mark Twain quote. He gets attributed with a lot of quotes. But there's a quote that says, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And I think that's true. We keep running into forks. We keep running into pivot points. And it's not so much going this direction or that direction, finding the right direction. It's just that we keep moving and we run into an obstacle. We might have to go round or over or under, but keep moving. That's the lesson of the pivot point, is success is marked by momentum, not some final state of arrival. Success is marked by momentum. And pivot points, failure, is how you ultimately get where you want to go. We learn from our failure and use it, acquiring the lessons and applying them, and continue to move in a direction. So my question for you is this: what's one failure that eventually led to success? So maybe you forgot this. At some point you did something and it didn't work, but it led to this thing, and it led to that thing, and ultimately you succeeded because of it. What's something that ultimately looked like failure but led to success? I'm gonna go to the comments real quick because I'm interested in what you guys are saying. What's a failure that turned into success? Einstein, Vandini says, Einstein tried 99 times. There's also the Edison thing where he tried 9,999 times and then eventually succeeded. Failure builds character, Octavia says. Robert Frost. Yeah, I don't know who said the fork in the road. We'll have to look at it. Vandini said, I did a nationwide fire and wheel competition, which did me a writing course. James says, publishing my first book, learning from it. Meantra said, still a failure. My master degree. Gotta quit. It was great. Thank you very much. Gave up selling on commission. Yeah. So, all right, you guys have some things. You've got some things that you remember from your life that you tried and they didn't work, and yet you learned something from it. It got you somewhere. Yogi Berra. Thanks, Jason. That does sound like a Yogi Berra quote. I think you're right. Yeah. So Robert Frost says 2 roads diverge in Yellowwood, and I took the one less traveled that made all the difference, right? So not quite the same as just take one. And I love that, Yogi Berra. Okay, guys, I'm gonna jump in here, and we're gonna finish this up and then move to your questions, because you guys are chatting it away, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to answer your questions. Okay, so we've got 2 stages left. The 6th stage in this process is mastery. This is the thing that I think we think is the end, and it's not quite the end, but it is an important goal. Mastering your craft, becoming great at what you do. So we're not just meant to find our calling and just find it. That's not the end. It's really, in some ways, the beginning. You're supposed to master your calling. You're supposed to get really, really good at it. And this idea of mastery is kind of a misnomer, because when we think of mastery, we tend to think of one thing. And this is something that I hear again and again and again, which is my calling just one thing? Is it just one thing? Am I going to have one calling for the rest of my life? Or if I pick something, am I stuck doing that forever? And the truth is, no, your calling is not just one thing. It may be a few things. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be a jack of all trades. I don't think you should be a jack of all trades, but you do need to become a master of some. And this is the idea of the portfolio life. The portfolio life was a term coined from a guy named Charles Handy. And Charles Handy wrote this book called The Age of Unreason in 1989. And he basically predicted that in the future, which is now, people are going to have multiple careers, multifaceted careers, and they're going to do lots of different things throughout their lives. And he called these people portfolio people. And we are living in that reality. Forbes released a study a few years ago that predicted by the year 2020, over half of the American workforce is going to be freelance. And by 2030, it's going to be something like 60% plus. And we're seeing similar trends and themes throughout the world. And so this idea that you're going to get a job after college and do that for the next 40 years of your life and then retire and live off a pension, it's a myth for most industries and most businesses, because most of these companies are not even going to be around in 10 or 20 or 30 years. And so we have to embrace what's called a portfolio life, which means we have to start building a suite of talents and skills and passions that we can all combine together to create a remarkable body of work. And so your calling is not about mastering one thing. It's about mastering a few things and combining them into your unique portfolio that makes your offering to the world something interesting and a little bit unusual, and it makes it yours. And that's the thing that you master. That's the thing that you get great at. Robert Greene says it like this. He says, the future belongs to those who learn more skills and combine them in creative ways. And so your job, if you want to be a writer, is not just to be a great writer. That's good. But that in and of itself these days is not enough. You have to be a great writer who also understands technology or marketing or business. You've got to combine that skill with something that looks seemingly unrelated. And when you do that well, you create something exceptional. You create a demand that is hard for other people to compete with. And this is how you make your skill set much more marketable. It's how you make your own career more interesting. And it's how you make a life more fulfilling. And so you need to be thinking about your calling not just as one thing, but as a portfolio of a few things that you can master. So the call to action here is to master a few things and combine them, which sounds, really simple, and it's anything but that. I want you to think of your core skill, the core thing that you want to accomplish. Say you want to be a writer, so the core thing is going to be writing. And then pick something seemingly unrelated by listening to your life, paying attention to the things you've always been good at. In my case, it was marketing. It was something that I kind of fell into and had accumulated a decade of experience and realized I love seeing ideas spread, which is really what marketing is about. I love kind of putting something out there and seeing it just catch on. And so when I combined my love for writing with my ability to market myself and help other people understand how to market themselves, all of a sudden I had a really interesting portfolio that other people had those skills too, but the way in which I had them, it made it hard to compete with. And my offering to the world became something unique to me. And so think of at least one other thing that you could bring to the table that's unique to you, that's interesting, that adds some flavor or texture or uniqueness to the work that you're setting out to do. Okay, so we're going to move on to the seventh and final stage in this process, and that's legacy. So you don't end with mastery. You don't stop there with getting great at something. That in and of itself is not enough. And so here we want to answer the question, what ultimately does success look like? How do I know that I'm done, that I've achieved my goal? How do I know that I've mastered? And I think success is not just about what you do. So a calling isn't something that is get and you go do it and you're done. I wrote on my blog earlier this week that my calling actually isn't writing. Writing for me is a means to an end, and that end is connection. And so calling isn't just what you do. It's really what you leave behind. It's who you do it for. And so legacy, impact, I mean, this is all kind of the same thing, which is your life's work is not just about the things that you do. In many ways, success is measured by what you leave behind, your legacy. How can you make others successful? So that's kind of our final stage. I love the way Jackie Robinson says it. He says, a life is not significant except for its impact on others. And gosh, what an impact his life left, what an impact his life made. And so I think it's really important, and I'm still learning this, that when we get to a point where we feel like we've arrived or we've mastered the calling, or we at least have all of the pieces together of the portfolio that we can start building, that is not the end. The end is lying on your deathbed and going, wow, like it wasn't just about me. Because at that point, if it was just about you, it will be unsatisfying. It will feel unfulfilling. It is about investing in other people's lives and helping them achieve greatness, multiply their own success. It's not just about doing the work unto itself. It's about doing the work unto the end of impact, of affecting the lives of people around you. And that ultimately is what we're called to do and what a calling is about. I love the movie Mr. Holland's Opus. And if you've not seen it, that's okay. And if you have seen it, you probably cried like I did every time you watch it. But at the end of that movie, it's a very interesting movie because it's about this man, this frustrated teacher who spends his life trying to get back on the road. He ends up taking, he's a traveling musician, and he takes a sabbatical, basically. He takes a break because his wife becomes pregnant to go teach music at a high school, which is a fairly thankless job. And he never gets back to professional music. He spends his life teaching. And for most of the movie, he's frustrated because the thing that he thinks he wants, the goal that he's trying to achieve, the wall that he's trying to climb, it's the wrong wall. And so out of frustration, he ends up having to do something else, become a great teacher. And at the end of his life, he gets it. On the last day of his position, because they're letting him go, and he's 70 something. On the last day of work, he goes into the auditorium, and there is class upon class of alumni who are all there, decades of students there to celebrate him. And one of the students is like the governor of the state. And she said, Mr. Holland, because he spent his whole life writing this opus, this great master work, and this piece of orchestra music. And the governor says, you spent your whole life working on this opus. And she looks at him, she goes, Mr. Holland, we are your opus. Like, we are your great work. It's the impact that you made, not just this thing that you created. And I think that's true for us too. Your great work is not just the novel that you write or the business that you launch. It's the people that you impact. Now, in our world today, we like to separate those things. Somebody asked about work-life balance. I don't think a successful life is about separating work from the rest of life. I think it's about integrating it. Not where they compete with each other, but where they overlap and complement and inform one another. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to have boundaries and that it's not difficult. I get it, it is. But it's understanding that the work that you do impacts people around you. And so I don't think this just means that you have a great day job, then you go home and you take care of your family, and that's enough. I think that's fine. I think that's admirable and honorable. But finding your calling is about finding the work that you're meant to do and then doing it, not just because you love doing it, but doing it because it makes the greatest impact that you can make on the world and on the people around you. And this is your opus. This is your great work. This is your calling. So practically what that looks like today is you invite other people into your journey right now. So we talked about apprenticeship. You need to be learning from somebody. And now we're talking about, how do you invite other people into your journey? How do you invest in the lives of people who are maybe a step or two behind you? How can you include people in the process? This could be a community, it can be a team, it can be just communicating with your spouse about what you're doing. What I know without fail is that every story of success is really a story of community. It's about the people that you bring around this dream and how that dream impacts those people. So that's what legacy is about. And that's what this whole journey is really about, is bringing people into the process and leaving an impact on them, leaving them better than you left them. So, all right, so I want to do two quick things. One, if you want to go deeper into this process, I would encourage you to check out the Art of Work course. If you use this URL, bit.ly/AOW course, you can find out more about that. We're doing an exclusive discount, a $30 discount off the normal price for that. And if you order it before July 6th, I believe, really in the next week or so, you're going to get 10 free copies of my book, The Art of Work. And that is just because of shipping costs, that's exclusive. The book bonus is exclusive for people living in the United States. If you live outside the United States, you still get the $30 discount, but just not the physical copies of the book. So go ahead and just check that out real quick, bit.ly/AOW course. I'm going to turn my thing back on. Just let me know that that works. I'm also going to turn off my screen, and I should be able to share this link with you right now. You know, if that link works, just make sure that it works. Okay, so I should be able to see that. There you go. Just click that. Let me know that that works. I'll leave that up there for you guys. Okay. All right. Okay. So there you go. bit.ly/AOW course. Thanks, Annie, for posting that there. Link didn't work. Oh, bit.ly.com. Okay. Just worked for me. If it doesn't work, try this. artofworkbook.com/calling-track. artofworkbook.com/calling-track. All right, that's my bad. The link is just, let me fix that link real quick. All right, well, I'm in so much trouble with this. Try that. Okay. Good grief. Took like 20 times. Okay. Try that link. Check it out. That's the Art of Work course. If you're wondering, well, how do I do this, and how do I find mentors, and specifically, how do I go pro, and how do I start making money off of my calling? We teach all that in the course. It's open for the next week. This is not a course that I teach very often. It's the first time we've done it here, and probably won't do it again. Highly recommend that you check it out, just as a gift to you that you can give to your friends, or take a group through the book if you'd like. You get 10 free copies of the book plus that $30 discount. Yeah, there you go. So, okay, guys, we've got about 15 minutes to do some questions, and hopefully this is helpful. I will send out these slides to you guys so that you have those. We'll send them out to everybody who registered. But yeah, I've got time for some questions. If you have any questions about anything that I shared, be happy to answer that, and would highly recommend that you check out the Art of Work course. Registration for that, including the exclusive free books that you get with it, that's only good for the next week. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you're going to want to jump on that. And I did record this, so this should be available to watch as a replay later on. We'll send out the link and the slides for that probably in the next 24 hours. Okay, Tom says the link worked just fine. 8th time is a charm. Okay, guys, so if you asked a question before, go ahead and just ask it again, and I'll answer these, as many of these as I possibly can. Somebody said something about my hair. I always try to prioritize hair questions. Funny. What do you call that haircut, brother? That is clean. I don't know. Expensive. I have a great guy who cuts my hair every time we talk about TV and what TV shows we're watching. Okay, Zeta, what is the best way to market a self-published book online? You know, I mean, that's a tough question because there's lots of good ways. I think some really good things that I've benefited from are using a launch team. I mean, I think the best way to promote a book, to launch a book, is to build an email list, have several thousand people on that email list, email them multiple times and say, go buy my book. But that takes time. That might take 6 months. And we teach people how to do that in our course, Tribe Writers. But if you want like just some quick hacks, like things you quickly, I'd build a launch team of at least 50 to 100 people who are willing to be like a street team and go promote the book for you. That's the first thing I would do. Second thing I'd do is I would do some sort of temporary discount of the digital version of the book, like 99 cents or $1.99 or $2.99, no more than $2.99. And then I'd partner with a website like BookBub, where you have to pay to promote. But I mean, we just did this promotion on BookBub and sold 1,500 copies in a day. So I mean, it's incredible. So if you have to pay whatever it is, like $1,000 to do that, and it's a self-published book, and you're charging $2.99 for it, you'll pay that, and you'll immediately make all that money back, and now you've got 1,000 copies of your book out in the world. So those are really two things that I would do: launch team, and then some sort of digital discount and promotion on a website or series of websites that promote those kinds of things. You just Google discount ebooks, free ebooks, and there's lots of websites that promote those kinds of deal. BookBub is one of the most popular ones. Okie dokie. James, how do you market your book? I'm a big fan of writing lots and lots of articles, like taking the book and chopping it up into a bunch of pieces that you can put on your blog and other people's blogs and websites and magazines. You kind of have to write the book that way, where it's chop-upable. So if it's not that way, then you kind of have to kind of retool it. But I think that's probably the best way to market a nonfiction book. Fiction is a little bit different. What I talked about with launch teams, discounts. The point is not to discount it forever. The point is to do something for short-term sale and then get it in front of a bunch of new audiences that haven't heard of it. Yeah, so I mean those are some ways to market a book. Carol says, how do I structure my memoir? Carol, I think you should read a book called The Memoir Project by Marion Roach Smith. It is the best book on writing memoir that I've ever read. By Bob, Bob says, I'm currently writing a novel now, and I wanted to know, how do I pump out quality words and lines every day throughout the process? Also, it is an avant-garde novel, so any tips on making it cohesive? Sorry for the detour. Well, I'm not an expert in writing fiction, nor in writing avant-garde novels that are also cohesive. I do believe that at the end of the day, structure rules. So I would highly recommend reading a book like Story by Robert McKee and following some of the structure principles that he lays out, even for something that's avant-garde. How do I pump out quality words and lines every day? I'm a big fan of the 3-bucket system, which is come up with ideas every day, capture those ideas. That's the first bucket. Second bucket is draft something every day. So write at least 500 to 1,000 words every day, which typically takes me about 30 minutes. And then edit something. So create something, come up with an idea, draft something, actually write something, and then go back and edit something that you've already written. Not the thing that you wrote today, usually the thing that you wrote yesterday or the day before. Incidentally, this is what Hemingway did. He was constantly going back and editing the stuff that he'd already written while writing new stuff. I think if you want to be great, you have to do that. If you just keep writing every day, but you're not going back and editing what you've recently written, I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think if you just binge write a bunch of stuff and then edit a bunch of stuff, you're going to rush through the editing process. Whereas kind of going back and tweaking things as you go, again, having some sort of like a buffer, like a 24-hour buffer in between what you've written and what you're editing, I think that's the best way to create consistent quality. That's how I write. I use the 3-bucket system. A lot of questions. James is marketing, question mark. I might need a little bit more information there, James. Jesse, do you recommend having your own office for writing? Not necessarily. I do think it can be helpful to have a space, like a writing space. I wrote my first, I write every book in some space, and it's usually a few spaces. Could be the, breakfast table. I have an office, but often when I'm writing a book, I have to escape somewhere. I have to escape from something that feels ordinary to some place that feels different or special. It's just, I don't know, sort of a mind trick for me because I'm creating something new. I'm not working on the same old thing. So I don't think you need an office, but I think it's good to have a space where like you sit down and your body is trained to do one thing, to get into book writing mode. And if it's the same space that you do something else, look at our kitchen table. And I worked on it every Thursday when my wife would go to a Bible study. And like that was a place where we ate dinner, But every Thursday night from like 6 to 9, I got to turn it into my workspace. So, I had a notebook and a cup of coffee, and I probably lit a candle at some point. I try to cultivate the space a little bit. I'm not like way into that like woo-woo stuff, it's got to be perfect or anything. But I think it's important that when you sit down to write, that your body and your brain is going, oh yeah, we're about to write a book. BookBub. James says, what was that site? BookBub. BookBub.com. Right here. Okay, any other questions, guys? Somebody said Nick Stevenson's giving a webinar, first 10,000 readers, building an email list this afternoon. Do I know him? I know of Nick Stevenson. He's a great guy, really smart. I would highly recommend you check out his stuff. Danielle says, I'm struggling to write just a 75-word entry. I get wordy when I drill it down. It sounds less like me. Any tips on pulling concise, short ideas from longer pieces? Danielle, I wouldn't like write something and then immediately drill it down. I'd write a bunch, like 500 words. And then I'd give it to a friend and I'd ask them what they think it's about. And when they give it back to you, if what they think it is about is what you think it's about, then good. If not, then you've got to figure out, how do I make this theme much more clear? And sometimes it's just, you just need an outside opinion. The things that we think that are important and we hold dear usually aren't. So, you know, I think you have to cut a lot. You have to kill your darlings, as they say. Melissa says, what was that memoir again? It's called The Memoir Project. It's not a memoir. It's a book about writing memoir. I have it somewhere. Let's see it here. The Memoir Project by Marion Roach Smith. Search that on Amazon. Great book. In short. Do you use Grammarly or some other grammar check? No, I use like a style book. You know, Strunk and White is a good style guide. I write mostly, you know, according to the Chicago Style Guide. I mean, I think that's enough. There's great grammar books out there. Yeah, Eats, Shoots, and Leaves is a good book. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, guys? We've got maybe just a few more minutes. Daria, how do I write without distraction like social media? I mean, these are like hard questions, right? Like I totally struggle. Like everybody, I think lots of people struggle with distraction. I was talking to a writer about this, and one of the things he said that I thought was interesting is he said, I plan for distraction. I plan for procrastination. I just anticipate it. I give myself enough time and room to let my mind wander without it derailing everything. And I think that's a great tip, because I think a lot of times we say, okay, I got to get focused. And we're not really being honest with ourselves, because maybe we get more distracted than we want to or realize. And then we get distracted and we beat ourselves up and go, oh, I'm never going to get this done. Instead of just giving yourself grace, but also trying to get back on track as quickly as possible. The main way that I get rid of social media distraction is I just schedule a lot of my posts, and then I check in once or twice a day to see the replies, see what other people are saying. And, you know, that's it. Alrighty, let's see what else we got here. Serious question, I procrastinate a lot. What are the ideal social medias to use to promote writing, and how much time should be used on those social media accounts? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, I mean, those are the big ones, right? Like I like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm less engaged on LinkedIn. Facebook is huge in terms of traffic, and Twitter is just like it's just a nice place to talk to people. I don't anticipate getting a lot of traffic or anything from it, but it's fun. Kim says, Jeff, where did you go? It might have to refresh or something. Bob says, Jeff, I appreciate your presentation. What I did find was the lack of respect to you while you were presenting by all of the comments made that interrupted with my listening and focus. You made time to time the presentation, and I made time to attend. Perhaps the webinar company. It looks like your thing dropped off, Bob. Bob, you can close the comments, by the way, and just watch it. Sorry to hear that. Try to be respectful of everybody's time and help as much as I can while making it relevant. Vandini says, how do I maintain continuous discipline? How do I battle under confidence, procrastination? Any tips from you? You know, I think that we wait to feel confident before we do things that we're afraid of, without realizing that really brave people are constantly doing things that they're afraid of. They do it afraid. It's not about waiting to feel confident. It's understanding that confidence comes with competence, right? Like you become more confident in something, the better and better you get at it. And you get better and better at it by just committing yourself to practice. And I think it's simple to say, but hard to do, that we just have to put ourselves in a position where we show up every day and we practice. And as we do that, things like confidence and focus, those things come. I think that we think discipline is something that we need in order to go do something. And the truth is, discipline is a muscle that you have to flex every day. If you want to become more disciplined, do the same thing every day. It sounds like, well, I need discipline to do that. But the truth is, you have to put yourself in that position where you flex that muscle a little bit. It gets a little bit stronger. And discipline. So you know, get up early, 3 days in a row, and you realize that it's easier to focus on something else. And so start small with little habits that you can cultivate, and build those over time. Bob says, perhaps the webinar company could make the option to turn off the comments as well as the visual words. Thanks for listening. Yeah, no problem, Bob. The visual words, I think, were the slides, just helping narrate kind of the process. Hopefully that was helpful. But I appreciate your feedback. I think you can close the chat. Kate says, hey, Jeff, will the chat dialogue also be available? So many wonderful comments being made. I want to make sure to capture them all. I don't know, Kate. I don't know if we can export that or not. I know that this stays here for a while if you want to kind of scroll back through and find something. Brad says memoirs aren't selling. That's probably true for some memoirs. But if you look at the New York Times list, every year there are best-selling memoirs that aren't necessarily by celebrities. So, you know, I don't know that that's true. I've got 2 more minutes, guys. Wow, lots of questions. Vandini says, guys, Twitter profiles. Highly recommend that you guys share your Twitter profiles here and connect with each other. And don't forget the hashtag Goins webinar. You can connect with people there too. James is, I am not a comedian, which is funny. I am not a comedian. That's, you know, ironically funny. How do you stand out in the crowd to build an audience? Debbie, I think you build a blog. You make that blog about something specific that is particular to your portfolio, which we talked about, and you write with a worldview. You write with something that is your unique perspective, and over time, you will build a tribe. You will build an audience that is committed to you and your message, not just because of what you say, but because of how you say it. It's a super simple thing, but that's what you get when you've got 30 seconds to answer a question. There's a blog post that I wrote about that, though, that I'll post here. Writing, I think. It's called You Write About Doesn't Matter as Much as You Think. There you go. Debbie says, will you please offer the 30-day writing challenge again? It changed my life. Debbie, you can sign up for that anytime at my500words.com. Okay, guys, we're at time. I'll grab one last thing. One more question. Diane says, what is the name of the style guide that you use? Chicago Style Guide. Strunk and White is also just a simple grammar book that you could check out. Strunk and White's, what is that called? Elements of Style. Debbie, will you please offer the 30-day writing challenge? Will you please offer 30? I got it, Debbie. Posted it there. My500words.com. Check it out. How do I make the demographic of my website diverse? How do I mask my influences? Interesting question. The demographic of your website diverse. I don't know. I mean, do you have to? I think that's like your work appeals to the people that your work appeals to, and I think if you want a diverse demographic, you write about diverse topics, I would imagine. And how do you mask your influence? I wouldn't mask your influence. I would honor your influences and be very clear about the people that have influenced you and how. I said one more question, but I'm answering like 3. Last one. How do you maximize time? I don't. I'm really bad at that, Jesse. What I try to do is pick one thing that I want to accomplish for the day, and I look at my calendar. Even if I have 20 things on there, I go, what's the one thing that I want to feel good about by the end of the day? And I just optimize for that. But I'm learning to say no to a lot more things than I normally would say no to. So, all right, guys. Hey, this was great. Melissa says, I don't see your post about blogging worldview. Okay, let's see here. That was this thing, coinswriter.com/writing topics. I sent it to you, Melissa. Okay, so guys, if you want to learn more about The Art of Work, you can obviously check out the book, The Art of Work, at Amazon or wherever. And if you want to learn more about going deeper in finding your calling for the next week, we're giving away 10 books and a $30 discount to anybody who buys the Art of Work course. You can click that link to get the course and just read more about it. There's a video. There's a lot more about it. If you had questions that I didn't answer in this presentation, signing up for that course would be a great way to get those questions answered and just go deeper and figuring out what you're supposed to do and actually doing it, whether that's becoming an artist or an entrepreneur or a full-time author. Guys, this is great. Thanks for being the first thing that I did this morning. This is the one thing that I wanted to do today to feel good about. If there's a question that I didn't answer, you can tweet at me at Jeff Goins. If you have any questions about the course, you can email me at jeff@goinswriter.com. Thanks. Have a great #Goins webinar to continue to stay connected with each other on Twitter. Have a great day, guys. Thanks. Have a good night for those of you who are getting ready to go to bed. Bye.